Hey guys, this is Tim, back again with another video. And in my recent video about my VFX folder structure, I briefly discussed that I used Deadline as a render management tool. And I got some questions on how do you configure Deadline, how does it work inside of Houdini. So I figured I'd make a quick tutorial setting up the repository, setting up the slave, showing how it all works. So just run you through the entire process. Also showing how you can make it work with for example, a Houdini version that's not currently supported by the repository, because you can easily make it work yourself. You just have to change a couple of lines in some Python scripts. So I'm just gonna go over that as well. It's actually, if you know how to do it, it's quite easy, but when you're first configuring it and you run into these issues, it can be a little bit tricky. So I'm just gonna walk you through the process, tell you what to keep in mind, and then this should hopefully be a good video for anybody trying to get Deadline to work, not just for using with Houdini, but for using with any other program, Maya, Cinema 4D, or whatever other thing you use. So just a brief overview again over what Deadline is. So Deadline is a render management tool, and it allows you to submit jobs from your host application, for example Houdini, or it can be Nuke, it can be Maya. So you submit a render job or a simulation job. It will be put into the repository, and then the repository will check which computers are available. So any computer in the network that runs a Deadline slave can pick up the job, assuming it has all of the correct licenses and stuff, and it can pick up the job, and then it will start rendering or simulating the job. So you can set dependencies for jobs to tell it like, okay, only start simulating or rendering once this job is finished. So you could say, for example, okay, I have a simulation job here, and then the render job should start after that job is finished. You can set up priorities, so like something with higher priority will get priority over another job. So let's say if one render is already running, you got like some emergency render that needs to go on the farm, you can just put it at a very high priority, so it will get rendered before the other jobs. And in bigger studios, it's always everybody is always like angry at other people for like, put your priorities down. We need to farm, blah 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 blah. And then, well, anyway, so just gonna go over how to configure Deadline, and then you can use it. And Deadline is, by the way, it's free for use up to 2 machines. So even if you don't have an entire farm or anything, it's still super useful to just use it on, even if you only have one computer, to just use it on your own workstation. Or if you have 2 computers, to use one as a repository and another, well, as a render slave, or both as render slaves. So it's free for 2 machines, and like after that, if you get more machines, I believe it was 48 per machine per year. So I mean, unless you have a very big farm, it's still pretty affordable. So yeah, let's dive into how it all works. Right, so what you first need to do is you need to go to downloads.thinkboxsoftware.com, and then you need to log in with Amazon because it's owned by Amazon. So I'm just gonna log in. And then you can download Deadline from here. So you can click download, and you just need to get the downloader for, well, whatever operating system you're on. So I have already downloaded it. So we're gonna go to that and then install it. Right, so here's the download. So let's unzip it. So extract here. Right, and we're first going to install the repository. So the repository would be installed either on a separate machine if you want to be a repository. So the repository will be the location of all of the configuration files for Deadline, and all of the, like when you submit a render, it will submit the work file, for example, the Houdini, the HIP file, it will submit it to the repository. So if you're just using Deadline on one machine, you will of course install this on the same machine as the client. But if you're like managing a farm, then the repository would be a separate machine, and then all of the machines that will be like with the render slaves would be these ones. So anyway, so let's install the repository first. So do you want to make changes? Yes. So let's wait for this to start. Right, so we're going to install this, accept. Let me put this down. So just to do the C drive on this machine, full read write access. Okay, so we need to install a new MongoDB. So MongoDB is what it uses for the database for the configuration. So press next. So it needs to download it from the internet. So let's have it downloaded. Okay, so there's the Deadline database and the MongoDB hostname. So this is going to be my laptop, and then it's going to go to the IP address of this machine and the MongoDB port. So I tried this before on this laptop, and I ran into a couple of issues with some certificate stuff. So it might be that I get back to this a little bit later, but let's just first install it and then we'll see. Right, so let's first download the MongoDB. Alright, so it finished installing. So here's a thing where it will, so the database can require a certificate, which generally you want to do if you're like in a bigger network. So you can give it a password to, so let's just do a simple password for now. So you would need to point to the certificate and then give a password in order to authenticate this. So I have tried this before on my laptop and I had a couple of issues with the certificate. So I hope that should be fixed now. But if not, I will reinstall this without a certificate. But I will just first go through the process to show how you can make it work with a certificate. And else I'll just do it without a certificate, because this is the first time I ever ran into that issue. So hopefully it'll work now. And if not, I will just do it again without a certificate, but not without showing you how you can make it work with the certificate. So anyway, so let's do that. Let's install the certificate. So it's gonna generate the certificate based on the hardware ID. So that's this thing. We had a password like that. License mode standard. So by default it will revert back to license free if you're only using 2 machines. If you have more machines, you'd use standard. You could also use usage based, which is you pay per minute basically. So the Deadline repository can also use Amazon AWS. Let's say if you want to upscale your render machines to include more machines, then you can use AWS through the Deadline repository itself. Of course, you'd need to have licenses for every piece of software that you use, but there's also a lot of usage-based licensing for Deadline. So yeah, I think you have for Houdini, for Redshift, so you have a whole ton of stuff you can do there. But let's for now just put this to license free, because we're just going to use the free license, which is free for up to 2 machines. Let's click next. And launch worker when launcher starts. Yes, and let's install. It's finished installing. Now let's open up our Deadline worker. No, not Deadline slave anymore, Deadline worker. So let's wait for this to start, Deadline worker. Right, so now it's going to complain about the certificate. So for some reason it never sets the permissions correctly. So let's go to continue. Let's say yes. So let's go to our database, search, and select our certificate. So you can say you don't have permissions. So I'm not sure that always happens. It never sets it correctly. So let's go to that location. So this is our certificate. So let's go to the permissions. So right click, go to properties, go to security. You must have read permissions. Okay, go to advanced, continue. So the owner, I need to change. So owner, I need to change the owner, I think. Let's put owner to users, so users can view it. So the owner has been changed. So now if I do this again, I can see this. So now I can go to edit. I can add permissions, put it to users, because I am a user, and let's put it to full control. Apply. Of course, you wouldn't want to put it to all users, depend like in every scenario, but in this case I am. So users, yeah, that's set correctly. Right, so now let's see if it actually wants to connect this time, because as I said, I had some problems with this before. So let's see if it does want to work. Yeah, so for some reason, like, I keep getting this could not find a certificate matching private key. So I'm not sure why that, because I've never had that before. So I will now just install it without using a certificate, but in general, you shouldn't get this error. I'm not sure where this comes from. So I'm now gonna reinstall the repository without using a certificate, but now you know how to sort of make it work with the thing, because I've never had this before, and I've installed Deadline before on many machines, so not sure, but be right back. I'm gonna reinstall the repository to not use a certificate, and then I'll be back. Alright, so this time I'm just gonna install it without the certificate, just to make it work. Again, if you're like in a bigger studio, you should probably do it with. Right, so this finished. So now let's open the Deadline worker. So now it should be able to connect, hopefully. So set repository doesn't require a certificate. Right, so the slave is now running. If you go to worker information, you can see license trial. So it's now set to trial, probably because it's a clean install, but it should revert to license free. So you can run this in license free mode. So let's open the repository. So the monitor. So there's a couple of things to Deadline. So it's quite an extensive software, so I cannot go into everything, but let's allow access. So you have the monitor, which is used to monitor jobs. You have the launcher, so that's over here down in the menu. So the launcher, so you can see you can launch monitor, launch the worker, launch worker by name. So of course now I only have one worker, but sometimes you have, of course, if you have a whole farm, you have all your workers there. So anyway, so a new user has been made for my user account. So it's gonna open the thing. All right, so here's our repository. So yeah, let's configure this. So if you go to tools and then go to, you need to enable super user mode, because we need to enable super user mode in order to make this work with some of our software. So super user mode, and then you can see I get a whole bunch of extra stuff. So I can go to configure plugins, and you can see there's a whole list here. So I'm going to focus this now on Houdini, because that's the main thing I work on. So let's go to Houdini. You can see this already has everything in there up until Houdini 18. So oftentimes you might not have everything. So if there's a new Houdini release, they're usually quite slow to update this to the new releases. So I will also show you how to add something custom. But let's first just make this work inside of Houdini. And then after that, we're gonna like add a custom Houdini thing here. So I might either add just our own custom Houdini 18.5 or something just to show it, or I might reinstall the repository with an older version that doesn't support Houdini 18 yet, but let's see. So anyway, so let's say we want to make this work with Houdini. What do we need to do? Well, we need to go into our repository. So go into the repository folder. And now I always need to see where I need to go for this. I think it was submission. Then I need to go to whatever program I want to install, Houdini. And then you can see there's client and installer. So go to installers and you can see Houdini submitter windows. So let's double click on that. So you need to go to C drive, deadline process submission, Houdini in installers, or whatever other program. Like if you want to do this for Cinema 4D, of course you'd go to Cinema 4D. Then it's the same thing. So whatever program you're using. So let's install this. So accept, deadline bin. So which version do I want to install this for? So let's just put on everything. So Houdini 16 preference, so it's going to ask for the preferences folder. So I'm just going to click through this for every single one. All right. And now it's going to install. Okay. Yeah, okay. I don't think I have 16.16 and 16.5 installed anymore, so that might be why it was erroring. But let's just wait for this to finish. Right, so it has now finished. All right, so let's open Houdini. So this should have added something to the Houdini environment file. So let's go to Houdini. And you can see it added the Houdini menu path to point to the deadline submitter. And also the Houdini path. So it added this to the environment file by itself. So it should now all work when we're going inside of Houdini. So let's wait for Houdini to boot and then oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention. While we're like inside of here on the configure plugins, we actually need to point Houdini here to the correct installation. So Houdini 18 over here, so Houdini Python executable, should go to the current build. So I have a file here. So it should point to 18.0.391. So if I go in here, 18.0.391, and it also needs to do this on the, so that's the Python, and the sim tracker should also be 391. All right, so then it's set up correctly to be used for Houdini 18. So let's click OK. So now the repository knows where to use Houdini. All right, so now I have this simulation here with this pig. Now let's say I want to submit this to deadline. So I have it set up to $job.geo and then hip name, blah, blah, blah. So it's important to use $job. So I got a question about this earlier about my folder structure for, well, the folder structure that I use and the presets that I use inside of Houdini. Like, why do you use $job, not $hip? Well, if you go to, let's say I select my ROP now, I go to submit to deadline. I get a whole bunch of stuff to, well, so like I get a submission dialog. So let's wait for this. And my laptop is quite slow, so it's gonna take a little bit. All right. So there's an option here called submit to Houdini scene, and you generally want to do this. So if I don't do this, then the repository will just read the Houdini file that I'm currently working in. But let's say I submit a render, and I submit it and it's rendering, and I'm continue rendering in the file and I'm making changes. Then the repository will keep reading the file that I'm changing, and stuff will change throughout the render. So that's not really something you want to do. So you generally want to submit the Houdini scene to the repository, and then it will read the Houdini file from the repository. What that means is that the $job needs to be put to where the actual to where your work files are. Because let's say if I have some assets that I load from a directory, if everything is set to $hip, it won't be able to find it because the hip file will be in a different location when it's submitted, because it will be inside of the repository. So that's why I use $job. So I just set $job to the correct location. So this is important. Always use $job whenever you're gonna use Houdini or use any of the other things that I pointed out in my Houdini, in my VFX folder structure thing with the custom things like $shot and whatever. That will also work, as long as you're specific about where it needs to go and don't use $hip. So I have a pig here, and it's going to be a DOP simulation. I want to submit this. So let's put this to selected, and then we're gonna submit this. So if it's a simulation, you want to put up the frames per task to be super high. Because if it's a simulation, it needs to be one task, because the task will have all of the frames in it. Because if it's more tasks, so if you leave it to one, then it will kind of restart the simulation every frame. So that's not what you want. So if it's a simulation job, you just want to put up the frames per task super high. If it's a render job, you could put it lower. We'll go more into that later. So let's put it to selected. Let's overwrite the frames. Let's put it to 120. And let's submit this to deadline. You can set your machine list or like other stuff. You can have a priority here. So priority, like if something is priority is higher, then it will get priority above another task. Concurrent task will be how many tasks will it run at the same time, which can be super useful. Let's say if you're exporting BGOs, like you say you're meshing a flip simulation, and like it might not make sense to only do one frame at a time, because I mean you might have a lot of cores that are not doing anything, and you might have extra RAM. So in that case, you might say that, okay, I want to do 10 frames per task, and I want to do 5 concurrent tasks. So then it's gonna run the job a couple of times at the same time, and for 10 frames per task. We're gonna get more into that later, but let's for now just concurrent task 1, and let's put it high. Let's press submit. Let's wait for our repository to start up, and let's hope it actually works. Finish submitting job. All right. So you can see it's just one task with frame 1 to 120, and it's now running. So if we go and look inside of this thing here, you can see the frames are starting to appear. So this is how it's running a simulation job. So I'm now going to switch briefly to my workstation for the recording to just show some render stuff, because my workstation is just faster and I have stuff configured there. So I'm just gonna stop the recording now and then switch to my desktop. All right, so I just have a simple Redshift scene here, nothing too interesting, but let's say we want to render this. So let's put this to $job, not $, but just $job. And let's call it test_$4.exr. Right. Let's animate our camera a little bit. Beautiful. Right. So you can also submit jobs by putting a deadline Rob over here. You can append it. You can say the range. So in this case, it might make more sense to change some stuff. So for example, I could say that, okay, maybe I want to render 3 concurrent tasks because I have 3 GPUs. So then it can just pick whichever, let deadline handle whichever frame it can sort of render simultaneously. So I'm just going to put 3 concurrent tasks, submit Houdini scene. I only want to use this machine. And let's submit the deadline. Right. So I passed the other job for a while. So if this had a lower, so this has a priority of, you can go to job properties. This is a priority of 50. Let's say if this was a, if I submitted this as a priority of 60, then this would get priority over that one. So you can see it now, it's rendering 3 jobs at the same time. And oftentimes it might make more sense to put multiple frames inside of one task. So it depends on your render time. Like if you have quite fast frames, it makes more sense to put more into one frame. But sometimes it doesn't. So let's say this one here, I have 3 frames in per job. So there's always also some startup time. So look. Now you can see, there they are. Let's open one up. Beautiful. Best thing I've ever made. So let's say now if I resume my the full res job, so it won't do anything right now because the other job is still running. But let's say if I now put up this priority to be 60. So this is just a job that I was already rendering. So now once this is finished, this will probably stop. So you will see once these frames finish. See, those are done. And then this one should jump in. Once this is finished, you can see now this becomes white. And now you can see this one starts because this has higher priority. So I'm just gonna pause it again because I don't want to render this right now. I just want to, so I'm gonna remove this job. So yeah, that's how you submit jobs. So you can either do it like this. And remember, if you do simulations, you need to put up the tasks to be quite high. So you need to really up the frames per task. So that's just general how you can also have GPU affinity, so you can only use, like, let's say only want to use one GPU or like whatever. Or there's a whole bunch of options. Don't want to get super into the details. This is just about how to configure it. So now let's maybe one more thing that I want to do is I want to show you how you can make deadline work with a version of Houdini that's maybe not supported by the repository itself. So I went ahead and installed an old version of the repository that doesn't support Houdini 18 yet. So if I go to Houdini here, and then you see Houdini 18 isn't here, it isn't here either. So if you have future Houdini releases and it won't be here by default, usually it takes them a couple of months to get it like in a build. But you can do it yourself. So if you go to your repository and you go to plugins and then go to Houdini, and you can open up here the Houdini param menu. So you can go with open with and then open it with a text editor. Right, and you can see this is the entire list that we have for all of the supported things. So what I can just do is if I just add another line here and just call this maybe the Houdini 18.0 height and executable, and let's just replace 17 with 18 in that spot. So 18.0, and also do it in the sim tracker. So let's go down here. So like that. All right, let's save it. And now let's go into, if we now check our tools, configure plugins, go to Houdini. You can see now Houdini 18 is over there. So let's see, like we are on build 18.0391. So then we can add Houdini 18.391 in there. So still remember that from the database, because I still had the same MongoDB in there. So that's the first thing that we need to do. Right, so let's go to our Houdini 17. So documents Houdini 17.5 folder. Open Houdini.environment and also go to our Houdini 18.environment folder, and let's add the correct ones there. So let's add the menu path. So let's add this menu path over here, and let's add the Houdini path here as well. So let's remove this thing. Let's remove the game dev tool for now. Alright, so this is added. So now let's try. So let's first close down Houdini. Depends on the release if this will actually work. I don't remember if this will now work by default in Houdini, or if we also still need to change some. Oh wait, I forgot something. We need to go in 17.5. If we type deadline here, you can see call deadlines in the, so if you go into the Houdini 17.5 folder and you just type deadline, see there's a call deadline command. So we just go to right click open file location. You can see that located in Python 2.7 libs. So let's just copy that. Go in Houdini 18. Just paste the Python 2.7 libs in there. Now we need to wait for Houdini to open and then close it again. We're in Houdini 18. Let's open our little thing from the deadline test. Right, let's open that. Right, so we have this thing here, submit to deadline. So that seems to work. So sometimes, I've had one instance where this would break, but I guess this works. So we have that, works fine. And there's also deadline ROPS over there. All right, so we should be able to submit this. So let's try that, just to see if it works. So gl/big. Right, so let's submit it. So there was one instance where I had an issue with opening this submit Houdini to deadline dialog. All I had to do was just open the Python file for that and then change the slashes. Don't remember exactly where this thing was located, but I think that was maybe just a bug that I fixed now. So anyway, so as you can see, this is now working. It's rendering, so this should. Yeah, so you can see that works. This works as intended. All right, so yeah, that's how to make it work inside of a new build as well. So that was the video. I hope you found it interesting, and now if you wanted to know how to configure Deadline, now you know. Of course, you can also install plugins for other programs. If you like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up icon. That really helps out the YouTube algorithm, gets these videos recommended to more people. Also, if you want to stay up with my regular release schedule, press the subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post something new. So yeah, hope you found it interesting. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any suggestions for new videos, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks guys. Peace.